Hello viewers, welcome to this particular lecture on microbiology. In this particular lecture, I shall be discussing three different activities or events in the form of biodegradation, bioaccumulation and biopesticide. Now they are three different events, but they are all carried out by microbes. And at the same time, the biodegradation and bioaccumulation will reduce the load of toxic pollutant on this earth. And at the same time, biopesticide means use of biological molecule in absence or instead of the different chemical pesticides. So thereby the load of pollution is reduced. To start with, biodegradation is a chemical dissolution of toxic material by bacteria and other microbes. And biodegradable, when we say, it can be quite comparable to compostable material, or the process of biocomposting can be quite similar to biodegradation. But actually not. Biodegradation is a generalized term and biocomposting is a specific term where the materials are placed in a compost pile and they are degraded by microbial world. And this degradation or biocomposting can be on a flat surface and they are actually covered with straw and degradation takes place, or it can be in the form of a pile. And because it is piled up, naturally this process will generate a lot of heat. So very often this is an exothermic process. But there is a typical model where we actually make the pile. So this is a typical model of a pile where you can see there are specific layers. Layers of the biocomposting ones, layers of straw, layers of wood shaving, and layers of other biological material like grasses. So there are different tiers of this material. Why? Because they will allow the air to go in or to percolate, and that will make the microbial activity much better. Okay. Now another very important term associated with biodegradation is the biosurfactant. Now they degrade certain material in the nature in the form of certain polymer which is biosurfactant. And when they are grown in the laboratory, these biosurfactant are the media to which the bacteria are attached. And thereby they are immobilized and they do the fermentation activity better. So these things also take place in nature. Why? Because they will degrade those pollutants remaining in situ, remaining in that place. Okay. So this is a very unique activity. Now let us consider some different molecules which are degraded by the microbial world. It may include the polychlorobiphenyls, which are actually very common, two phenyl rings with multiple chlorine, and this chlorine actually will be liberated. On one side, the chlorine will degrade the stratospheric ozone, and on the other side, their degradation rate is very low. So naturally they will be remaining in the nature for a long time, and that will act as a persistent organic pollutant. Okay?
Sir, I have a question. What are the uses of this polychlorobiphenyls?
Yeah, actually polychlorobiphenyls can be used as a coolant. It can be used in our day-to-day activity like carbon paper. So in our day-to-day activity we are using it, but without considering the fact that deposited in nature as pollutant. Clear? Now there are some molecules which are called polyaromatic hydrocarbon, and they can be pericondensed or catacondensed. Naturally pericondensed are more complex, and catacondensed the size increases because it increases on the surface. But both of these are degraded at a very slow rate, and naturally when they are remaining in nature for a long time, we have to depend on bacteria because chemical dissolution is not possible. This is another important problem in nature, the radioactive decay. Now radioactive decay is a very slow process. I am not telling that it is only induced by nature. Definitely if you place in any media, there will be liberation of this alpha, beta or gamma radiation, and thereby the radioactive decay will take place of the radionuclides and it will produce a non-radioactive molecule. But in presence of certain bacteria or certain microbe, the radioactive process or radioactive decay may be faster. That is the advantage. And there is another important molecule which are bioplastic. Now this bioplastic may be the polymer of polycaprolactone, it can be polybeta hydroxybutyrate, it can be polylactic acid. These are all units of individual monosaccharide units or individual monosaccharide sugar which are degraded by bacteria, and they are actually producing the specific bacterial enzymes which will degrade the plastic. And you can see here that this is the complete plastic bottle which in 80 days has totally vanished by some aerobic bacteria like Bacillus. So bacterial enzymes can actually degrade this bacteria or degrade this plastic bottle as a whole. Okay?
So why are these bottles, all the bottles, not made up of this biodegradable plastic?
Yeah, you can use it, but think, if you want to make a bioplastic, it is a cumbersome process. So the cost of the bottle increases.
Okay.
So that is the reason why we are using non-biodegradable plastic. Now let us come to a very important phenomenon which is called persistence. Now persistence mostly we use for pesticides because they are deposited in nature and placed there for a long time. But when the microbes are acting on it, they will produce specific degraded product and they will be deposited in different layers in the form of metabolites on the basis of their percolation. And ultimately, they will produce carbon dioxide and water and the pesticide will be totally degraded. But mind you, this process is very slow. So naturally, this will not only involve microbial degradation, there will be other forces of nature also acting, which include the photodegradation, which include the dissemination in the soil or spreading in the soil. The more it spreads, there is more probability that it will affect greater areas. And sometimes it can percolate into the groundwater and mix with the water table or aquifer and cause toxicity. So degradation of pesticide is really a problem, which is a mixture of both biotic and abiotic factor. If we consider the aldecarb degradation, which is a common pesticide, there are two ways. Aldecarb will be oxidized to aldecarb sulfone, which ultimately will produce carbon dioxide. On the other hand, it can be undergoing hydrolysis to produce aldecarb oxime, and again carbon dioxide will be generated. But this degradation is not rapid, it is very slow, and that is why the persistence is very high, and that is a problem. So it is very important to understand what is the level of lysis. So there are devices like this, these are called lysimeter, and lysimeter is actually an instrument with which we actually detect what is the percentage of degradation of a persistent pesticide. And it has a head part and the tail part, and actually it has got the following application. It can actually, it will do the pesticide studies, it will do the water quality studies, it will be used in mining application, it will be used in septic tank location or septic tank monitoring. So different activities are there, but the primary activity is what is the amount of waste material present in the soil and whether it is of any toxicity to human being. Now coming to a very important phenomenon which is actually called biotransformation. Biotransformation means a particular microbe produces some enzyme, will convert say molecule A to molecule B. One such particular event is degradation of organophosphate. Now whenever there is organophosphate, meaning there is a phosphate side chain attached to an organic compound. So the enzyme is phospholipase. So any bacteria producing multiple phospholipase are ideal biotransformer. And one such example is microbial conversion of atrazine to hydroxyatrazine. Why this transformation occurs? Because it is a normal phenomenon where the gene ATZA is active in a particular bacteria bacillus, and thereby this hydroxyatrazine is a relatively less toxic molecule which is friendly, which is helpful. A very important phenomenon is biological treatment of wastewater. You see, wastewater, when we purify, the first phase is physical treatment, then is biological treatment. What is there in biological treatment? The microbes are grown on pumice or on a specific solid media, and they are degrading it and they are rendering the toxic hydrocarbon toxic component into carbon dioxide or into relatively simpler carbon compounds. And at the same time, at a later stage, if the pollutants are still there, there might be some chemical process. So this is a very important application of microbial world in the field of biological treatment of wastewater. Now let us discuss the second part of it, which is bioaccumulation. Who are bioaccumulator? Bioaccumulator are those microorganisms which will deposit huge amount of pollutant within their body. This may be pesticide, this may be heavy metals, this may be radioactive minerals, and naturally this will be concentrated in a particular place, and this terminology is called bioconcentration. But when in a particular food chain, a particular molecule which is toxic is gradually increasing in volume, increasing in amount, along the food chain. This phenomenon is biomagnification. And this biomagnification is very common in some heavy metals. And when, suppose, say for example, mercury, which is commonly inorganic, is converted to methyl mercury, and this methyl mercury goes into the body of fish, and finally it is consumed by human, the concentration of methyl mercury increases, and that imparts toxicity. The same is the case, you can see here a pregnant woman taking this methyl mercury along with his food or along with her food will be depositing this methyl mercury in the neuronal terminals, and thereby the neuronal transmission will be reduced. And at the same time, that particular toxic molecule can get into the fetus, which is causing neural deficiency in the developing fetus. This is another problem, the tetraethyl lead. Now this tetraethyl lead is actually used in fuel, gasoline. And this tetraethyl lead nowadays, its volume has reduced because we are not using leaded fuel. But the lead can also be there in paints, and that can also cause a bioaccumulation or biomagnification. And this will cause severe problems like headaches, irritability, aggressive behavior, and at the same time it can reduce the IQ, it can damage the kidney, it will impair hemoglobin biosynthesis. So a lot of toxicity are there. When it comes to copper, which is coming from different copper smelter, there will be specific problems in the circulatory system, in the gastrointestinal system, in the kidney, in the liver, even in the muscles. But this accumulation is so slow that apparently initially we don't feel it. And the same is the case when we are talking about cadmium. You see, cadmium can be accumulated in the lung, cadmium can be there in the heart, cadmium can be there in the kidney, but initially there is no sign. And where from it comes? It comes from the nickel cadmium acid battery plants. So thereby we can say cadmium toxicity is also a slow killer, but the time we understand it is already late. Similarly, nickel also, it comes with cadmium. Nickel apparently will bring about skin lesion, which is common to allergy. But we will not understand that this is due to nickel. But when it percolates, goes inside the body, it can cause toxicity to liver. That is dangerous. Now let us consider a very important molecule, which is diphenyl trichloroethane. This is called DDT. And this diphenyl trichloroethane is a potent pesticide used in the early years of 1930. Even all through the Second World War it was used. So the entire globe was after this particular pesticide. Why, you know? Because relatively people thought that this pesticide is safe for human. But they never really understood that this amount of DDT that they are using is getting deposited in the soil and getting into the food chain. Why? Because the degradational rate is very slow. You see that in 0 years, suppose there is 100 kg of DDT, in 120 year it comes down to 0.39 kg. So you can just imagine 120 years, mind you, even the complete degradation has not taken place. And naturally, it can be used against mosquito, it can be used against body louse, it can be used in household purpose. And there lies the problem. It will be showing far-flung biomagnification. And the problem is such, you know, if it is in the aquatic sediment in the say 0.003, when it comes to fishes it can go up to 0.04, when it comes to bird it can go up to 25 ppm. So similarly in human also the same thing, because we also consume fishes. By the time it comes to human it will cause toxicity. Like one person may become sterile, one person may show liver damage because of this DDT. So this problem was actually understood by a lady called Rachel Carson. And in 1962, she published a book called Silent Spring. This book is unique. You know why? Because actually she mentioned that there will be a day when there will be no bird to sing in the spring. Why? Because the eggs are gradually getting destroyed. The eggs, the shell of the egg is becoming thinner under the effect of biomagnification or under the effect of DDT due to biomagnification.
Sir, what are the effects of DDT on bird eggs?
It's a good question. You see, this particular chemical will impair the calcium metabolism and it will also impair the metabolism of vitamin D. So both are required for egg crust formation. So naturally the egg becomes thin and the fetus cannot grow inside the egg. so the birds cannot survive, right? So another problem is also, it is also a very important metal, but it is strontium. Now this strontium actually may accumulate in the bone, and you can see the density. This is the normal bone and this is the density of strontium. Of course, strontium may be used in the cancer therapy. So if there is more strontium in the bone, bone cancer may be averted. But under normal condition, if the strontium is there, then calcium accumulation will be less. So naturally we will suffer from problem. So this is a unique problem of strontium. Similarly, this is another problem of bioaccumulation where there is red tide. You know red tide. They are the huge multiplication of dinoflagellates. And these dinoflagellates produce a complex toxin called ciguatoxin. And this ciguatoxin actually is accumulated in the shellfish. So it is accumulation of ciguatoxin in the shellfish which will come to human and will cause toxicity, neural impairment. Okay. Similarly, we take vitamin A. It's a very common phenomenon, you know, because it is actually producing retinol, preventing night blindness. But do you know, if we take excess of vitamin A, it might cause definite impairment of the bone. It will cause the closed trabecular pattern because of hypervitaminosis A.
Sir, what is this trabecular pattern actually?
You see, a particular bone system is having Haversian system, and this Haversian system will show definite sites of calcification. So when it is trabecular pattern, this calcification becomes very scanty. So bone becomes spongy, soft, and thereby people will suffer from easy fracture. Clear to you? So that is the negative effect of vitamin A. So this particular bioaccumulation usually occurs from non-point source. From different sources, this particular toxic pollutants will be deposited, and they will be deposited in the water body, maybe in the coastline, and they will be accumulated in the body of fish, and they will be consumed by human, and we will suffer. So this particular phenomenon of bioaccumulation can be seen in case of cadmium deposition in the coastal area. So this is one important case study where we can see that cadmium accumulation is occurring in the coastal area, though it is being used in the internal area. Why? Because it is being carried by the water body into the coastal region. And one such important victim is this particular Atlantic puffin. This bird actually is perishing because of this cadmium toxicity, because they survive near the coast. A very important problem is cyanide deposition. You see, cyanide may be potassium cyanide, sodium cyanide, whatever it may be. It is used in gold purification, gold mining. So this cyanide will percolate into the skin and gradually it will be deposited. So we will not die immediately, but our respiratory rate will be reduced. Why? Because this particular cytochrome oxidase or cytochrome A3 oxidase will be impaired, blocked by cyanide. So gradually we will have a slow death. So that is also due to cyanide bioaccumulation. A very interesting case study is seen in case of Long Island estuary, which is in US. What they actually found out, all through, I was telling you, it was 40-50 years between 1930 to 1980, continuous use of DDT. So DDT was accumulated in the sediments and they were being consumed by fishes, and these fishes were taken up by bigger fishes, which are the normal prey of birds. So these birds like this bald-headed eagle or this osprey, they were all perishing. They became endangered. Why? You know, because of this DDT toxicity. So the US government then understood and they banned DDT. So this is a unique case study, that is this Long Island estuary, which has taught us the lesson of the ill effect of DDT and how it affects the nature. Okay. So what can be the remedy? Because it is DDT accumulation, so there must be other ways. And the ideal answer is integrated pest management. What is integrated pest management? We will be forecasting the disease. We will be using the different methods of control, like the biological control, like the cultural control, like the soil preparation or soil dressing and proper recording. And last one is perhaps chemical control. So what does it mean? We will have less chemicals applied to control the disease, and thereby the impact of pesticide will be reduced, and such cases of Long Island estuary will not be there. So we come to the last part of this particular lecture, which is the biopesticide. Now the biopesticide, actually I told you, it is a microbial compound, but actually speaking, it is mainly including the different entomopathogenic fungi or viruses. It may also include the nematode. it will include the different biochemical pesticides like pheromones, or it may also include a particular gene which is incorporated into a plant producing a transgenic which will not allow the development of disease, and they are called PIP or plant incorporated protectant. So let us discuss some these biocontrol agents which may include the Beauveria bassiana, which is a fungus killing the insects. It may include the NPV, that is nuclear polyhedrosis viruses, which actually is absorbed by the gut and they are destroying the gut inner lining and the insect will die. Or it may be the insect pheromone, which is actually produced by the insect, but this may be used as a trap where they will attract the male or the female and thereby fertilization can be prevented. So these are all similar biopesticides, but this is interesting where we are actually trying to identify a particular disease resistant gene, and this disease resistant gene is incorporated into that particular plant body and it will express, and that toxin which is produced that will kill the pest, insect pest, and these are called PIP, or this is ideally transgenic plant. And one such transgenic plant is the production of BT plant or BT cotton. So it is clearly this particular cotton is made, transformed using the Bacillus thuringiensis gene that produces the BT toxin, and thereby this particular insertion of this toxin oligomer inside the particular plant will make them genetically modified, and thereby these insects will be killed at the time of feeding on the plant leaves. This is a fungus basically which is Lecanicilium, which is killing the ants, because ants are sometimes harmful because they destroy the plant leaves, though ants are also important because they are pollinating agent. But when we talk about these examples of antifungal fungi, the most important organism is Trichoderma. You can see Trichoderma will be hyperparasitizing on plant pathogenic fungi. So if you grow Trichoderma in the rhizosphere, it will not allow the entry of pathogenic fungi and thereby it will prevent fungal disease of plant. But when we talk about this particular Tenarnema, this is actually a typical nematode which is attacking insects pathogenic to plant, and they are acting as insecticide. Similarly, Cydia, this is Cydia pomonella granulovirus, which is an insect pathogenic virus that will also kill the insect with a pathogenic to plant. All this time I was telling that there is a particular pathogen which is acting as a biological controlling agent, but there may be some chemicals produced by these particular microbes which may act as elicitor of plant defense, and these compounds will include the spinosides, these are polysaccharides, or it may include the chitosan, or may include the terpenoids. All these are actually the molecules which will activate the systemic acquired resistance by eliciting the SAR genes, and thereby the plant becomes resistant to insect attack. So this is a very good molecular biological tool by which we can prevent plant disease. So let us discuss some applications of biopesticides. You have understood that biopesticides definitely can be used without the toxic implications of chemical pesticides. Similarly, biopesticides can be used for a prolonged period because it has no side effect. Or it can be used for some specific crops like grapes, which are very sensitive crops, or some specific bacterial disease like damping off, ideally. Or it can be even sometimes used against fungi which are commonly showing resistant to common fungicides. So that is why biopesticides are very important. And what are their advantages? You see, they do not have any harmful aspect. They are more effective sometimes than chemical pesticide when used in long term, or sometimes definitely they are less costly and they are biodegradable. But there are some disadvantages because some of these pesticides are too specific. You cannot kill too many organisms. Or sometimes their action is so slow, by the time the activity starts, by the time the crop has ended. So it is very slow. That is bad. and so efficacy may be less, and when we are producing more food, we want more food, sometimes biopesticide may be of negligible effort. So thereby we understand that biopesticide along with other forms of pesticide may be giving a more legitimate way of controlling pest. So students, in this particular lecture we have discussed the different aspects of biodegradation, the different aspects of bioaccumulation and biomagnification, and I have concluded the different types of biopesticides and their application. Thank you.